welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. It's me, Nigel, and I'm here with my boy Zach. How you doing, Zach?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I am doing good. I am doing well. It's been a minute since we
Yeah.
last been here, but we're here today to talk about Cesario. But before we get into it, I want to get into some news or anything like that. Let's put a little bit of time. Let's do 15 minutes. Anything on your mind, anything you want to talk about, any movies that you saw that you want to talk about?
I don't think this strike is going down anytime soon. What do you think?
I don't
Getting
think
worse
so,
every
bro.
time we talk about it. And,
Yeah,
we talk once a month in terms of this, and it's like, no end in sight.
yeah, it's crazy, man. It's you see all this like sinister stuff that the studios are trying to do. You you see some of the CEOs have, let's just say some of the CEOs have good PR teams that tell them the right thing to say. And some CEOs, let's just say they don't listen to their PR team and they're like, "Oh, I don't see the point of this." And it's like, "Bro, come on, man. Like, I understand you got all the money in the world, but let's have a little humanity or let's have a little self-awareness or awareness of what's going on." Like, come on, man. It's kind of crazy and bro, I don't know if anything's going to go back into production until like a year from now. I don't know. Spider-Man 3, Spider-Verse 3 has just been like halted indefinitely. Deadpool 3 is halted until this is over and all the
How
shows
much
are.
money are they willing to lose for these halts of projects until? Because you got to look at it, even for Disney, right? Because Disney's just had flops after flop lately,
I know. We're not even going to talk about
and
Secret Invasion.
I don't want to talk about that either. But now they're at a point like, hey, look, the ones that are probably going to be grand slams in terms of income, they're halted, and they're definitely going to start putting the pressure on to figure something out sooner rather than later. If the writers and everyone pretty much stands their ground on this, right? So, and I think they can. They're an industry titan in the sense that they can put the screws on other production companies
Right.
to fall
Right.
in line. So if you get Disney to move, you can get the others to move.
I mean, a big problem that everyone talks about is Netflix because Netflix model is different from a Disney or an Apple TV. Disney has always had network channels to make money and with ads and also the amusement parks. Apple has their hardware and software to make money. Netflix only makes money through subscribers, so they're really fighting tooth and nail to keep their numbers a secret, to keep their model the same way it is. You see all these reports of actors and writers talking about how when they were on a hit Netflix show, of course they didn't know if it was a hit. And of course, while they were on the show, they also had to work a second or third job. And it's kind of crazy to think
Wait,
about that.
wait till the lack of writers actually starts affecting things like Q4, Q1 of next year, because they have to release those numbers, and we'll see if actually quality content's going to come through with something.
Well, do they have to release those numbers? I mean, that's one of the
In terms of no,
stipulations that they're trying to
in
fight.
terms of revenue, their revenue
Oh,
is
okay.
in turn going to go down if the content's
You're
not
talking
going
about
to
right. Okay.
coincide with the
Yeah.
subscribing.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of views and
Oh no,
watches. That's what I was thinking
but
about.
you're gonna see like a recycled library where there's not as much original content. It's other stuff just trying to plug the holes. And like you said, you make a good point with Netflix where their entire income base is
Subscriptions.
subscribing, and the other ones aren't really necessarily like up for that. But
You see, they
I
even terminated their ad based plan out overseas.
yes,
So it's like maybe that didn't work as well as they thought it would, and so
they
they
don't need
just
to.
got rid of
They
it.
don't need to have an ad based thing when the password tool sharing tool worked better
True.
than anyone thought with the amount of subscribers they added.
True. True. Maybe
Crazy how
that's
much
why
money
they
they
had
added
such a
from that.
surge and
Oh, that
they're in
was
the black
tons.
right now. That's what I'm hearing. They're in the black. I don't know. I
We'll
don't know
see.
how true that is. But
Yeah.
I don't see that much content coming from their end. They're
Mm.
licensing a lot of stuff from overseas, like a lot of Korean shows. But I don't see as much original content. And I really think they need to work on their marketing, because People talk about all the time whenever they would have something on Netflix. A lot of people didn't know about it. Like the biggest thing that's coming out now is they clone Tyrone, and that's a movie. That's not a series. So it's
Yeah, it's not
people are
really
going to talk about it.
commercialized in any way. I feel like they just kind of rely on people who've already had Netflix and they just assume you're either going to have Netflix or not. They're not trying to capture more business. They just want to capture the low-hanging fruit, which is the password sharing crowd. And I think that's
Yeah.
going to be their ultimate demise if they keep up going down the rate that they are with that, right? Because you need to control the market, right? I mean, capture it.
So because I'm not to beat a, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Since we're talking about Netflix, I want to change the subject and talk about when did fantasy become so political? Because
Talk about Lord of the Rings.
no, I'm talking about The Witcher.
Oh
And
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
fantasy
yeah.
shows that have come out recently.
I finished it
You
too.
know,
Yeah.
I recently saw Dungeons and Dragons on Paramount Plus. And now
Oof.
I know it's not going to win any Oscars or any Emmys or whatever. Well, it wouldn't win an Emmy, but it was just a fun fantasy movie. It was just
Uh
fun.
huh. Yeah.
And I'm like, when has that stopped? Because I'm thinking about like old school fantasy movies like Princess and the Bride, Conan the Barbarian, all those movies. Like some
Hmm.
fantasy was just fun. And then some might say it was Lord of the Rings, but I think it was Game of Thrones that has turned every fantasy show into like CNN but with swords and sandals and shields and stuff. Like it's getting to the point where I watch this fantasy show and I cannot watch it without subtitles because all these peoples and places have different names and different language names in different languages, and it's like, you said what? And he said what? And then
Yeah.
every single person has to have a British accent. So I'm like, how are you pronouncing that?
Yeah.
And what's going on? It's so political now. And Dungeons and Dragons, I do recommend it. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was fun,
Hmm.
and I wish fun fantasy would come back. That being said, I haven't seen the second volume of The Witcher because I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
So
I'm just
kind of,
interested.
it's a couple prong approach. So I don't know if The Witcher is the best example because unless you read the books for The Witcher, you're not going to appreciate the show so much.
Fair point.
Anyone who's played the game, that's a completely different animal.
Hmm.
Um, but no, you're right because I was kind of like, I'm watching this. I'm just thinking like, look, they're even in the books, the game, take it however medium of how The Witcher's been out now. I feel like it's just box checking of who they can put in there, what their identity is in some kind of way, like Dandelion, bisexual, having a relationship with Radovid is like, come on, man. Like, why? What are we? First off, those two characters are very important and they're pivotal parts of the story and many different parts of the book series. And why are we forcing that just because you want to placate to a certain audience? I feel like the reason why we've talked about this before, the original Lord of the Rings movies were so well done is because they hit the book so well and they didn't really go away from the storylines in the books and you can visualize the books like in person. And
Yeah,
that's what a lot of people appreciated. And I feel like The Witcher just decided to bastardize the books and the games to a point where like let's just hit these crowds and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I got a
And
question because I didn't read the books. So,
oh yeah,
in
yeah,
my opinion, I feel like The Witcher is trying to run on the heels of Game of Thrones, and instead of The Witcher
yeah.
being about The Witcher, I feel like it's about all these other people and all their other schemes, and then
That's the point.
Henry Cavill's Witcher is just there
That's the point.
sometimes.
That's the
It
whole. That's the whole point.
That's like in the books and stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's the case. Oh,
So the
okay.
books are pretty much surrounding Siri, who is like the real person, or I guess the driving force between all the political strife and all the issues in the realm, right? And it's
Hmm.
Geralt's responsibility to kind of keep her on her own track, which is whatever destiny she wants to make, because she's got her father who's the emperor, and she's got this ancient bloodline where power is passed down through the mother side, right? So all the women are super powerful and they're empowered. and it's just her trying to like figure out where she belongs on this whole political chessboard, along with what she wants. Obviously, what she wants is not to be in power. She thought she was forced to like follow through with that, right? And she kind of went a line, and then she ran away, and all this other stuff, right? And Geralt's, even though it's just The Witcher, it's like Geralt's just trying to like one figure out like was he even worth trying to look after her, and he was pretty much the about the father, so to speak, and then all the relationships that he brings in with his school, and I like that aspect. Like that's really well done. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I just don't like. Well, first off, we can go into casting and all that stuff, but Yennefer, Triss, like all that's like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like these characters are specifically detailed and described in the book in a way where, okay, you get the eye color right, but everything else is wrong. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like Yennefer is German. Okay, like
Mm.
let's just put that out there. Last time I checked, didn't see the person who plays Yennefer right now. Didn't think a German person in the Middle Ages, which is supposed to be a mythological Eastern European, British Isles type of thing in the medieval times. Didn't think Germans look like that, but that's just me, right? We
Right.
kind of have to like I understand like there's certain roles you can kind of get like creative with, like I understand that, but like the main ones you want to hammer home with that, because those are like the protagonists, like the main ones where you have like the storylines. You want to make sure that you're following through exactly. Like Yennefer is just as important as Carol,
Mm.
especially in the books, right? How are you going
Yeah,
to
to my
hit
understanding,
Geralt
she's the one
exactly
who
right,
gets him
but
to
not
feel
Yennefer?
emotion
Exactly.
and stuff.
No, exactly. It's just it's so many different things. It's nothing against the actress who plays Yennefer, like she does a good job, but it's just why do we have to keep continuing this game of all right, we hit this minority box, we hit this identity box, and it's just fantasy is easy because you can easily make that argument that
It's
oh
fake.
it's not real. Yeah, it's fake.
Fiction.
Who cares? I can do whatever I want with it. But if you're going it based on the book and you're trying to follow the book storyline, make sure you detail the characters that are in the books correct.
Well, I think, and I'll say this because I can say this because I won't get as much scrutiny as you would if you said this. But I feel like it's just getting out of hand across the board, right? Like, I'll give an example. Little Mermaid just came out, right?
Oh my
Now
god.
she's black.
Yeah.
Um, I just think it's weird because
I
you
don't care
see
about the
these,
scrutiny, by the way.
you see kids go like I grew up going to Disney World as any other kid.
Yeah.
You would see a character, you're like, oh, that's such and such. Bam, you pick them out. Bam, take a picture. Cool. There's
Mhm.
no question about who that character is. Redheaded white
100%.
chick with you know fish
Yeah.
legs. Boom. you know and
Yeah.
then and it's great. You see these some of these young black girls, they're feeling represented. They see the new Little Mermaid, but I'm also thinking like there's going to be confusion because even if a character is fictional, there's certain traits and certain things about that character that makes them stand out, so you can pick them out when you see them in a lineup of characters. So when you go to Disney World and you see a black chick with red hair, but oh, are you Ariel or you're Ariel or who's that? Which one's Peter Pan? Like every single live action Disney character is being almost every single one is being changed, and so there's not a clear way to pick. Like if you're auditioning to play a character at Disney World, how do you
How? Yeah.
know? And then I don't know. I'm even getting confused when I'm trying to bring this up. You know
No,
what I'm
it
saying?
makes sense. Like because you're like, all right, well, what version are you? I
Yeah,
thought there's supposed to be
yeah.
one accepted version, and I'm like, well, if you can pick whatever version of Ariel you want, then
It's gonna be
what's
like,
going to
oh,
stop you from?
You're Ariel circa '92. Like what?
Yeah,
Like
no, exactly. No,
it's
no, I
it's just
understand. Yeah.
confusing. So is like Santa
Well,
Claus gonna be like a purple haired like guy with a guitar, and I don't know, like is it like if I could walk into a room and be like, who are you supposed to be? Oh, I'm Santa Claus. No, you can't. Well, who says I can't be? I mean, you know, it's just
Yeah.
confusing like that. It
No, I
just
get it. Yeah.
causes
There's like a
it's very
universally accepted image of who Santa Claus is in America. There's different versions in Europe. Yes, there's a
right.
black version. We know that, right? Well, you do now.
Well,
I think
Santa
it's the
Claus is like
Netherlands or
Jesus.
German.
He's whatever color, people decide he is.
Yeah, but no, like different versions. But in America and the US, accepted version of Santa Claus is this big white guy with white hair.
I think of
Weird.
Kurt Russell when I think of Santa Claus from that Netflix movie.
Well, especially now. It's getting close, isn't
He's my favorite Santa Claus.
it? Billy Bob Thornton for me.
And speaking of streaming, one last thing. One last thing. Um, I noticed that I just checked my H. Well, now it's Max, and I noticed what my plan is. I checked it. I checked what it is because I get it free through AT&T. I'm like, so what do I have? And I noticed now I don't have the plan that plays 4K. I noticed you got to pay extra. You got to pay $20 a month for
That's why I don't
4K
have it free
Max.
for AT&T because I do the 4K. Yeah,
So I'm like, and it's
it's
not.
worth it.
And I noticed it's not just Max anymore. It's a lot of these streaming
No,
services that don't offer 4K anymore. And I'm at this point where I'm like, it's going to cost too much to get 4K because pretty much everybody has a 4K TV now. And it's getting
hmm
to the point where it's like we're not watching anything in 4K anymore. Unless you're Apple, Paramount Plus, I think still does it. I think Peacock still does it.
streaming is pretty much makes the most sense in 4K because cable doesn't even do 1080
Yeah,
very,
yeah, cable
and it
doesn't do
does
1080.
720 because that's true high def. I guess it's
Yeah.
technical high def.
Yep, yep.
So where you get true 4K is in the streaming because that's how you build you do it. Look, I understand, I get it. There is a huge difference between the two. I think it's worth it for me, you know,
It is
but
worth it, but we're talking about if you have multiple streaming services like I do, I pretty much have all of them.
yeah.
If you're paying for 4K for each, you're
hmm
paying more for 4K streaming than you would be for a cable plan to have all the channels. You feel me? So I'm like, where's the line here? Pretty soon people are gonna be like, look, we all have 4K TV. Like some
But
people
cable's
aren't
not
like me and
flexible. You
you. We
can't
don't
change the plans on and off whenever you want versus cable. You got to get into a whole, you get locked in into like some kind of
that's
contract
true.
subscription
That's
and
true.
there's equipment. Cable still finds a way to charge you for everything. Oh, look, you got all these extra taxes and fees by the
Yeah.
government and all that crap. So it's not like they're absolved.
It's a little cleaner with streaming, but I'm just at the point where I'm like, now it doesn't make sense because we all have these 4K TVs, and now these companies are nickel and diming for 4K. And I get it. It's a it's a harder stream. It's a harder on your router and everything like that. But it's a bigger cost for them. But at the same time, I'm like, you promised this. Now we're getting this. It's getting a little like, come on, bro. Come on, what are you doing? All these streaming services, and they're not doing a widespread talk about it. Like I don't know if anybody noticed that the current plan that they had, because I had the current HBO 4K streaming plan, and then once Max happened, it downgraded it to 1080. And I'm like, do people even know this is going on? Because now people are watching 1080 on a 4K TV and
Right.
don't
Yeah.
realize it.
With the YouTube streaming that I have in all my streaming services, I pay $100 a month for TV, which isn't really that bad.
Nah, it's not bad. Nah,
So I mean,
that's nothing. That's negligible. It's
but
nothing.
it's like for me, it's like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But for some people, I look here. I mean,
Wait, you said 100
it's
bucks a
only
year or 100 bucks a month?
a month, not a
Oh,
year. You
yeah.
kidding me?
100 bucks a month, man. That's a lot, bro.
I don't think you understand how expensive internet and cable is out here. You know, like for me, that's
True. You're in
it's nothing.
Vegas. You're in
Yeah, I
Vegas.
mean, we have one cable provider out here. They can charge whatever they want.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
So I'm like, all right, I'm used to paying like 250 with internet and TV a month. Like that's what I'm used to paying. So it's like, okay, if I saved $50 a month, which is the reason why I went to the YouTube thing because of live TV and all the other stuff, like, all right, makes sense, you know. Um,
Yeah. And one last
but
thing. I know we're going
you're right
over.
about the 4K though. Like,
Right.
because it's, but you know, unless there's a mass exodus of streaming, they're not going to change that business model in terms of that. Like,
Not unless the
imagine,
strikes force some boycotting of some
you
companies and
think there
streaming
will? Do you
service.
think it'll get to that point?
I don't know, man. It might. The
So
way these
let's
companies
just
are just
let me pose something to you. What if movie studios just start their own streaming service, like each one of them, where it's just direct to the TV instead of no more movies, and they cut out all the middlemen. You just pay for whatever, you have a subscription. Let's just say if Oppenheimer just came to TV instead, it was no longer a movie theater. Do you think that would work?
some filmmakers wouldn't like. I know Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg wouldn't be having that. And to what you said about um movie companies putting on streaming, I mean, we already have moving movie companies that own streaming services. Like Universal is Peacock, Paramount is obviously Paramount, Apple TV. You know, they got their own. MGM is with Amazon. You know, we a lot of
AT&T owns Max, and part of is it Max or is it? Yeah, it's Max. I think it's AT&T and Max.
no, didn't they sell it to Discovery? That's how we got Warner Brothers Discovery, and that's how we got
Oh
Max.
yeah, so it's Comcast that owns it. Comcast, so Spectacor owns Max then. Okay.
Yeah, so we already have that, but there's a lot of filmmakers who won't let that happen at all. I mean,
Yeah,
look at
but those
Christopher Nolan.
filmmakers have their own studios and they can make that choice.
I don't
The
think
ones
we're a
with
studio.
clout,
Mm.
Spielberg, come on, Nolan can kind of do whatever he wants at this point,
But
you
think about
know.
it, the ones with clout don't want to go to that streaming model. They want to stay with the. I mean,
Well,
Nolan still shoots in film. You know, like
but at a certain point, you're gonna have to know your audience.
I feel like they
They're
want to
forced to.
change the audience's mind.
That's not happening. Where I think once the streaming thing and like COVID happened, the cat's out of the box and it's not getting back in.
But
It's
look at
just it is what it
Oppenheimer,
is.
bro. People paid hundreds of dollars just to drive out to certain theaters to see it in 70
I know
millimeter.
closest one was 4 hours away. I thought about it. It's the Chinese theater, by the way, in Hollywood is the closest one for me.
Mm.
I have a better chance. Like you would have to kidnap me to like convince myself to go all the way out there, because I don't know if you've been to that movie theater, but first off, that place is huge. All right,
Yeah,
and I don't like being around that area as it is anyway.
right.
So
Closest theater to me was an hour away. So that's an hour. That's 2 hours because down
that's
and
not
back.
that bad
Plus
because I
three
drive
three
an
hours
hour
of the
to see my
movie.
friend who lives in the same city as I do. That's nothing. I would have done that.
Yeah, but I can't do that, man. That's a 5 hour day, and I still got a little young kid. I can't do that, man.
Yeah, but if you're already going to see what's three, what's an extra hour and a half, for all that in the end of the day for seeing it in its true form? Because I talked to someone yesterday about seeing it. He saw it in the 70 millimeter. He saw it in Atlanta, I
Mm,
believe. And so I was like, dude, it was unbelievable with
mm.
like the aspect. Like it would change like midway through the movie, like the aspect ratio and stuff. And it was just like crazy how much of a difference it made.
Well, since we're on the Oppenheimer, I know we're a little over time, but I just want to say, I've been pretty critical of Christopher Nolan lately. But Oppenheimer
Oh gosh.
was great. I think
There
this is
wasn't there
Christopher
wasn't
Nolan
a
back to form.
single there wasn't a single criticism I have of that movie.
I feel like I did, but I can't remember.
See, you find things. That's the issue.
I
Like
don't
you're a
find
middle.
things, bro.
Yes, you do, because you find things to not be. You're not happy. You're a middle-aged white woman who's complaining that
What?
there's something in her
No,
burrito in Chipotle, and you're like, you just can't be happy that you got a burrito.
no,
Like that was a good movie.
no. When you go to film school, they tell you once you start down this path, you will not enjoy movies the way you used to.
Nigel, I'm telling you something right now. Okay,
Mhm.
the movies aren't made for people who went to film school. They're meant for normal people who didn't go to film school and can enjoy something for what it is. All right, because I'll tell you something right now. I guarantee you did not pay attention in school or understand the full history of the Manhattan Project. And I was trying to nitpick on all of that because I'm very familiar with all of that. And
Mhm.
that was, he crossed all of his T's and dotted his I's on that. I was impressed.
Oh yeah, I saw that. But I will say in the beginning it was a little choppy for me. A little too choppy.
I feel like when you do biopics of like one person, it's just kind of tough to.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How
Unless
do
you
you
do
want to
like
start this? Do you want to do an origination story, or do you just want to kind of have him like kind of close and like kind of explain who he is and like? character development and conversation, which I think was the right choice versus like, oh, he was a beaten child type of thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when Michael Mann did Ali with Will Smith, instead of doing like a whole biopic, he chose one significant part of Ali's life and just told that story. And so that's why I didn't feel choppy. I feel like well, Oppenheimer, he was telling a lot, so that's why it was more choppy in the beginning.
There's a
So
lot to him, though. That's the issue because
yeah,
I think when it came to, because he's a very complex character, right? Like,
right,
just so you know, or like just for people who don't know who he is, like the movie is only a microcosm of who he is as a person, right? Because
of
this guy
course,
is revered as the savior of humanity because he highlights and runs the Manhattan Project, which is responsible for the nuclear weapon that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II.
mm,
But keep in mind, the original intent of that weapon was to deter the Nazis.
yeah,
That was the
yeah,
whole point, right? And he's a Jewish man who happened to align himself in certain ideals of the Communist Party during the 30s. And that was already a hot button issue. And by the time World War II ended and we were in the Cold War with the Soviets, being a communist wasn't really a good thing.
yeah, yeah,
So, but I'll
and
tell you some who, in terms of acting, Cillian Murphy is a given, but I was extremely impressed with was Robert Downey Jr.
yeah. Did you see that? I don't know how true this is. I just read a little bit of the article, but did you see that Christopher Nolan encouraged him to not use any of his tropes that made him a household name when his career resurfaced, like his quick quips, his Robert RDJ charm or nothing. Like he told him to just get away from all of that and reconstruct this character from the ground up. And it was amazing. It was great. It was like I thought it was dope. And I mean the whole movie was dope. I like the idea of Christopher Nolan using color, black and white as and color juxtaposing each other, as the color was how Oppenheimer perceived everything to have happened. And then the black and white was um Strauss, yeah, that's how you pronounce the name. Strauss's view of how things happen, a more objective view, a more because Strauss is more black and white character wise, as opposed to Oppenheimer, who Strauss would say like this guy loves, to entertain. He loves the theatrics. He loves a
I
crowd.
picked that up
You
right
know.
away when I
Hmm.
was like, okay, so are they kind of doing this in terms of like a present day, like pastime type of thing? Not present day, but you know what I mean? Like they have the movie set right after the bombs dropped. That's
Yeah.
its time, it's present versus the past, and they're using black and white as present. But that quickly changed my mind when he was receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom
Hmm.
and the 70s and it was in color. I'm like, okay, now I see.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think using it wasn't a trial, but it was like that faux trial
A
of
tribunal.
the tribunal of them picking apart his life. I thought that was a great storytelling tool to
Fantastic.
go through his life
Dude, that
and
was
see what
perfect.
happened. And then the
Because they
the
broke
way
it
they
up into
reveal things
chapters.
at
Like,
the end, like
because
how
they
they would
broke
chop
each
things up.
part. Like, that was the time, that was the mechanism for them to pick which part's important for us to highlight with this guy. Because there's so many.
Yes.
Communist Party, his womanizing ability, his uncanny ability to cheat and just
Yeah,
float
that
all
one
over the
line where
place.
he's like, they're accusing you of start having an affair with that guy's wife. He was like, that won't happen. He won't testify against me. He's like, what? You didn't do it? He's like, no, he didn't figure it out. I was like, what? And it was like a throwaway line. I was like, oh, that says a lot about his character. Like,
Dude,
that's
it's
kind
the
of crazy.
time, like time and
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking about a guy who grew up in the 30s and 40s, right? Like in terms of being a young man, and he was at the top of his field in something that really didn't exist in America, and he brought it over.
I mean, I'll say one last thing so we can get into Cesario, but I didn't realize. I don't know why I didn't realize, but I didn't realize that this was the first Christopher Nolan project where Cillian Murphy was the main character. I was like, oh, I was like, no, no, this can't be. He's been working with him for years. He's had to have played
Yeah.
like the main protagonist. I was like, no, he's never been the main protagonist.
Or Cillian Murphy in his last big roles, he had Peaky Blinders,
Hmm.
and he
Amazing
had
in that.
this, and he talked about how he's never going to smoke a fake cigarette again because he had to smoke so many for these roles. He's like, I don't care if it's herbal or not. That's not good for you. I was
Yeah,
like,
I
oh
know
well,
it's really not.
that guy chain
It's really not.
smoked like no one's business. Like that dude always had a cigarette in his mouth.
I
Like
know.
even
Yeah,
when
you noticed that he was always holding it the same way.
he
I'm
I
like,
guess when you're
jeez.
making a weapon of mass destruction and it could you had no idea if it was going to ignite the atmosphere. That was my favorite part was Matt Damon's characterization of the
Yeah,
general. He was like, "So how sure are you that this won't light the world on fire?" He was like,
near
"Near
zero.
zero." Or like if it happened, he was like near. He was like, "Well, things can happen."
He's
You
like, what do
know.
you want for theory? He's like, I want zero. That's what I want. He's like, I can't give you that. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Before we move on, I just wanted to highlight this. Like, that's a testament to people in general making really crazy decisions because they were backs are against the wall. Like they didn't know how this was going to react to the Earth,
yeah.
and the fact that they were willing to test it with a very valid theory, thinking that the world was just going to spontaneously blow up because of a chain reaction that would not stop. It's just so fascinating to me.
And you
And
see
the
why
amount of balls it took for them to like, you know what, let's just do it anyway because we don't have a choice.
it's
It's
either
just
that or we're killed by our enemies. I don't know.
or they didn't even they had a theory on what the blast radius was. They're
Yeah,
like, is
everything was
20
theory.
miles enough? We're like, we hope.
And they're like, oh yeah, the radiation should clear about, this mileage. I'm like, it should? You guys can call me tomorrow. I'll be towns and towns away,
Yeah,
partying and
because there's
drinking.
there's test sites out here, right? They didn't test nuclear weapons out here because nuclear weapons were quickly phased after World War II because obviously nuclear fallout,
Mhm.
hydrogen bombs quickly replaced it because they were
Yeah.
simultaneously working on it. But there's tests, they were testing the H bomb out here all the time, right? In the late 40s and 50s. And, that was a tourist trap for people to watch them drop it, you know, out here. You would see the cloud that was, the size of Mount Everest. And you can see that from like 30 miles out at any given moment in the desert. And it's like, just imagine seeing that. Like, that's crazy to me.
That's that's insane. But yeah, you know, you heard it here.
So
Nomader recommends Oppenheimer.
I watched Sicario. I watched it yesterday
Right.
because it was a long time since I've seen it, and I forgot who was in it really. And once again, I feel like John Barathol was just kind of typecasted, even though he played a bad guy. Kind of like Walking Dead, where he was like good and bad, I guess, in a way.
But he was a little more vulnerable. He wasn't like Frank Castle in this.
Well,
He's a
Walking
guy
Dead,
who's
I
like,
think
why
he
are you making me
was.
do this? Why are you making me do this? He was more like a pawn, and so it was kind of different. Kind of. It was more like a cameo role. you know.
One thing I did appreciate, besides the fact that Benicio del Toro did a fantastic job,
Hmm.
being the Colombian cartel hitman who was kind of like playing everyone so he can get what he wants with the revenge. Emily Blunt's progression of a character where she did everything by the book and then she gets rudely awakened with how the status quo is in American, or, no, you have a green
The
light to do
political
whatever you want
game.
against these cartels guys. Like, senators already
Yeah.
said yes. And that's real life. Like, look, and this is the evolution of her as a character. Like, she had this crazy misconception of how it works because so many people have opinions when it comes to cartels, immigration, the illegal immigration that comes from the border, and they don't live in an area where it's affected by it. We're the third largest city
Exactly.
in the country that have undocumented workers, and I'll give you guys just to give you an idea like how that affects us. So, car insurance in particular, right? I got hit by someone a few years ago where they were underinsured, where they didn't have enough car insurance to actually cover my medical bills. So, if you don't even have a driver's license because you crossed the border and you don't have a way to identify yourself and you're here illegally and you're driving a car, whose responsibility is that if that happens? That's on you. What if you get into a nasty wreck, you're on fire? Like, that's your responsibility to cover it. Like, there's a lot of things involved that affect you more than just jobs or like all that stuff, right? Human trafficking, there's people and kids who get found in shipping containers out here on an almost normal basis. And a lot of it comes from being smuggled from across the border. It's like stuff that people just don't talk about. Like, hey, look, it's the reality of it. And that type of realization for her, like when she realized, like, look, these people are bad, like it was a very fascinating evolution for me to watch that with her.
Yeah, especially when she realized like we're not even scratching the surface.
No, because no matter what they do, it doesn't change anything. And you're just taking out one head of the snake, and another one's you got avoided power, a lot of violence, someone else takes over, and it's usually someone worse because the amount of people they had to kill to take that void of power is it's a lot more than the previous guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this movie came out in 2015. I love this movie, and one of my favorite directors did it, Denis Villeneuve, and
Yeah,
Taylor Sheridan wrote it, right? And you were talking about how Benicio del Toro does an amazing job as Alejandro, and he's the Cesario. Now,
Sicario.
Sicario. Um, he now the interesting thing about his character is that Taylor Sheridan, the writer, he had a whole lot of dialogue for the character and everything like that. He talks a lot more in the original script, whereas Benicio and Denis decided, it doesn't really make sense that this mysterious guy just meets this woman, just tells her his whole story. And so they just started picking out lines and to the point where he barely talks in the movie at all. And I think it adds like to his character. I think it adds to not only his character but Emily Blunt's character to where she's like a fish out of water. She connects with this group, doesn't realize what she's getting into. And then the whole time in the beginning when she's just with them, they're just doing stuff and she's asking questions and she's getting no answers and she's just getting in the cars with them and going to different places and stuff. And you as an audience member, you're really seeing it through her eyes and you're like, what's going on? Like, why are they driving? Wait, why is the federal police of Mexico riding along them with these huge ass machine guns and all this armor? And then they're like, oh, we're going here. Oh, watch the rooftops. Watch, keep eyes on rooftop. I'm like, what? like you're watching the first time you're watching this movie, you're like, what is going on? And that's the thing about this movie. It's just constant tension from start to finish. It's just tension, tension, tension. It's just great storytelling. And every time something happens, something else happens, which beats up the tension. And then you as an audience member are like, what's going on? What's going
On
on?
a on an actual like real connect, like a real thing that's happening, like still happening.
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the part that is just like, yo, these guys are nasty.
Yeah.
Like they're, you know, Heather asked me, it was like, hey, would you consider Al Qaeda or Mexican cartel more brutal? And I had to think about it. I'm like, cartel's more brutal because there's more competition within the cartels to be brutal, where Al Qaeda is pretty much the big dog in the Middle East in terms of terrorist organizations, and that's it.
Mm.
Like cartels, there's hundreds of them fighting each other all the time, and they have to do some crazy crap
Yeah,
just for
there's
them
like
to like
wars between
all the
different
time, dude.
regimes.
Dude,
Yeah.
like when I was in TJ, all right, years ago, across the border, okay, as a young guy, and went to the donkey show and all that stuff, right? But I'm not gonna tell you what that is. You could Google it, but make sure you have an incognito browser on for that, okay?
Mm.
And I'm like, oh look, like oh the military and police are here. They're all in like, I came back to San Diego. My friend's like, oh, what color gear were they? I'm like, oh, they're wearing black and stuff. He's like, dude, that wasn't the military. It's like, oh shit, it was cartel. They're just hanging around with like automatic weapons and stuff, like armed to the gills. And it's just
Yeah.
like, dude, this is just nuts, man. Like, it's so unbelievable to me, and it's violence is so normalized now, and people are just kind of used to like gunshots. Like this, the when the families were playing soccer, right? They're watching their kids play soccer, and they hear like they're interrupted with gunfire and all that, and they just stop and they keep going. I'm like literally, this isn't our backyard. Like it's right over the border. It's not even like well into the country. It's like you can throw a rock from El Paso over to these towns where people Americans live, and you're seeing this,
That's
and it's
crazy,
like it's
man.
so unbelievable
It's crazy that
that
you
people
brought that
just
up
don't
too,
understand that.
because it's like in my notes. I was like, "Is this a perfect ending?" Because the scene with Alejandro and Kate, you're like, "That was a great ending." How he's
I
just like,
loved it.
you know what? What do you say? Move out of town, you know,
Yeah,
stop this
don't
line of
hang out on
work.
balconies for a while.
Yeah, he was like, you're a sheep, and this is
This
wolves
is a
work or
wolf's
something like
den.
that.
Yeah, move to a town where there's still law and order.
Yeah, and then he walks out. She aims the gun at him, and he just looks at her. He's like, and then he doesn't. If I'm remembering correctly, he gives her a bigger target. He's like, just fuck, just do it.
I think you would do him a better. You would have done him a service if she shot him, but she
Yeah,
wouldn't shoot him. So he's
because for
just
those who don't remember or don't know, Alejandro's family, his wife and his daughter, were killed by the cartel. His wife's head was chopped off, and his daughter was thrown in a vat of acid by the cartel.
which
Alejandro
tracks, by the
was,
way. That's a realistic mechanism for execution. So if
yeah,
anyone
yeah.
doesn't know, so
And Alejandro was a lawyer at first, and then he became a Sicario.
yes.
So it's like, whoa. Like, and then you see how this guy works. I'm like, so was he was he like in the military before he was a lawyer,
No, it
and
was
then he
cartel.
oh he was cartel.
Yeah, no,
Oh, okay.
he was a cartel assassin
Yeah, 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 yeah,
for
yeah.
because he kept saying Medellin cartel. Was like, well, that's the beginning
That's
of the cartels with Escobar's
yeah. He did say that. He
cartel in the
said
80s and
Medellin
90s.
because he said
Yeah, no,
one
that's
word.
where
He
they.
said Medellin, and then Kate was like, "What's Medellin?" And isn't that when Josh Brolin just smiled? Was like, "Look, man." He said something like, "You don't know what you're talking. Like, you don't know what you're getting into. You shouldn't have heard what you heard." You know. She was like, "Wait, what's Medellin?" But yeah,
Yeah,
like he.
the first drug cartels came from Colombia.
Hmm.
So you have Bogota, Medellin, and Colombia, and those where Escobar started the whole drug trade. That's where it
Right.
started, and then the
And he even
Mexicans
said
got
he came
involved
from
shortly after.
Colombia because
Yeah,
she was like, "Wait, he's not NSA or she said something. He's not." Duh, duh, duh. It's like, nah. Alejandro
dude,
works
he's
for
out doing his own
whoever.
thing, serving his own purpose.
Yeah, and then yes, even Josh Brolin's character says Alejandro works for whoever will point him in the direction of who created him, whoever created him. So yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah, it's his character is awesome. I love, especially that meeting in the beginning of the movie when Kate she drives with them to a different location, and then there's just this room of law enforcement guys, soldiers, Delta Ranger guys, and all these
Yeah, they're
different
just CIA.
CIA. Like they're just talking, and she's like, I don't know what's going on, and it's the whole scene was beautifully directed. It's you see everything from her point of view. The camera's pivoting to different people. You don't know what they're going on. They're saying lingo that she doesn't know because you don't know. They're saying all these things, and the camera's whipping around trying to catch up with the conversations. And then in the background, Alejandro's just sitting there like looking like he's half asleep. And
You know,
at first he's blurry, and then they do a rack focus on him because she's like, "Yo, what? Who's this guy? Who are these
what's
guys?
the most
What are they
defining
talking
part?
about?"
Like I liked was when he actually has to stand off with his family's killer.
Oh,
And then you're not thinking if he's going to do it or not, right? And he's like, "Look, do they speak English? No. All right, we're going to speak in English." And he's like having his kids still eat. He shoots them, and for a minute you're thinking, "There's no way he would do it, right?"
that's
But he
what
does
I,
it,
that's what I thought.
and I'm actually happy for him that he does it because regardless, kids get killed. Like that's not the point. It's the fact that that cartel boss was like, "Holy crap." And he let him sit for a little few minutes before he killed him. Just let him have that feeling. Like I
And
just
I'm
took
glad
everything,
the
dude.
scene was directed that way to let it sit and marinate that happened. Because my reaction when I first saw this movie, was the same reaction as the cartel boss's reaction. I was like, oh, because I didn't think. that was going to go down like that. Because
I
you
knew
know, a
it
lot of
was.
movies
It
are
was a
kind
matter
of
of
the same.
how.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
lot of movies kind of go with the same formula, and this movie flipped it, and it was like, oh, I thought he shot the dude, and then it pulled back, and you're like,
Three
oh,
shots. Boom, boom, boom.
and they're just so quick. It's just like he's like, it was personal to me. Pop, pop, pop. It was like, oh, I'm like, dang, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, and he let it marinate, and it just marinates and marinates. Then he's like, finish your food, and I'm like, oh. And the dude just can't move. He can't believe it because he's, I'm guessing from his point of view, he's like, this is a cop. I guess he doesn't really know who this guy is, so he's like, oh, he's just a SWAT guy or a cop. He's gonna take me in, or and then he says something about his daughter, so he knows who he is. But I guess he's like, he's just gonna kill me. So it is what it is. You die by the sword, you live by the sword, you die by. But he actually killed a family, and so he's just in shock.
Yeah, stuff like movies like that don't happen anymore. Like they will never have that type of
Nah,
formula where you would actually see like the brutalization of someone who's willing to kill kids.
it's
And
just
it's like it's
wild,
such a
bro.
realistic human thing.
The
Like
brutality of I'm just the audacity to show the brutality.
I
You
love
don't
it.
get that anymore.
You need to have that. It's such a true human element, man. Like it's so
Somebody
true.
who's just consumed by pain to the point that
Yeah, but these
he would
guys
just
kill
do
each
it.
other's families and kids and stuff all the time. It's nothing new. It's like you have to show that. Like if you're going to go in showing like these people are nasty and they're vicious, show it.
Yeah.
You have to, because otherwise these messages of people like understanding like cartel's not that big of a deal because it's not affecting their bubble every day. It's like you got to show it.
That's
Most
a
of these
good
people
point,
aren't living
man.
in these border towns, like so there isn't really like a personal connection to any of this anyway. Like, look, these people are nasty. Like, they kill each other's families all the time. Like, instead of just like insinuating it, it's good every once in a while to actually have that detail visualized. You
That's
know,
a good point because Victor Garber's character talks about like Kate, like people way above me who wear suits and ties, authorized all of this. This is way above me. This is way above you. And you as a viewer can judge. I mean, we see all those glorifying like whistleblowers, all well, not whistleblowers, those people who just want to bring up a cause just to say like, oh, I know about this cause and you don't. We see those people all the time, and you can judge and you can sit on your high horse, but at the same time, you're not living in these areas. You're not being affected by this. You don't know people who's been affected by this. And sometimes you know, there are men and women out there who have to make hard choices and who have to taint their own selves to get rid of some nasty stuff out there. We have iPhones and computers and stuff like that because some people
we're
had to
away
get their
from it
hands
too. We
dirty.
don't. There's our even our society, even our worst parts of our society, doesn't really have a lot of that, if
Mm.
any. Well, we don't have anyone decapitating heads, throw them in the street and stuff, right? But it's we
Now, I'm
don't
not
have that.
condoning
We're
that.
so
I'm
far
just
removed.
saying, like, the law enforcement in this movie
Oh, I love it.
greenlit some things that some people would view as wrong to look like, hey, we need to cut the head off of what did you say? We need to cut the head off of the lead
Snake.
snake,
Yeah,
because we're just clipping at his tail for years.
yeah, yeah.
We need to get this snake. And the
And then
way
there's a
they do
void.
it,
Yeah,
it was just crazy. And and when you watch this movie, like I know for me when I watched it the second time, I knew what was going to happen. I was actually putting the pieces together as it was happening. I was like, oh, that's why they went to the bus station. Oh, that's why they were talking to these guys. Oh, that's when Alejandro said this. All the bus station guys were like, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. It's like, oh, because they were looking for this tunnel because they knew it would give them access to this one guy because the cops is in the pockets of the cartel. So it's
right,
like
right. Because they needed the money launderer so they can get John Barenthal out, who would they would
yeah.
squeeze information from, and then that's where it led to everything. Yeah,
And you see them making noise over here so that Alejandro can do his work over there. And
yeah.
then it's like Josh
A
Brolin's like, "Oh,
distraction.
you went down the wrong tunnel. You shouldn't saw what you saw." You put the pieces together, and I like that. I like movies that They don't tell you everything at first. They give you the pieces, and then you, as the audience member, can put it together later on. You're like, oh, that's why that happened. That's why that
Or
happened.
there's movies where there's just a lot of violence for no reason, and it doesn't really push the story.
Yeah,
I like how there was like a justification for all of the murder, like that. That's a it's good. I like that.
yeah. And that's one thing too about this movie. I just like the things they chose not to tell the audience, and the things they chose not to show the audience, as opposed to the things that they did show and did tell. Because you would just sometimes you'll see a character go into a room, then they walk out. They're like, "Oh, we got our next objective." You're like, "What happened?" It's like, it doesn't matter. We're on to the next thing. This is what's happening, And then, and then, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name right now, but his character, Kate's partner, he's like, he's like,
Oh
"Yeah,
yeah,
you just need to ask the right questions. Yo, let me talk to you for a second." And then he asks him some questions, and you still don't get any answers. And he's like, "All right, well, all right, just don't keep us in the dark anymore." It's like you didn't do as
did
much as
some
her.
things like you thought you got concessions and
Yeah.
you didn't
Oh
get
yeah,
anything.
Daniel Kaluuya. Yeah, Daniel.
Uh,
It's like you you thought you did something. It's like he just needed to assert. He just needed to feel like he had some control, and so they made him feel
yeah,
like he had a little bit. Yeah,
they gave him a they threw him a bone, dude, and
yeah,
it was like it
yeah.
came out of my mouth. Like this is why I don't like spooks, man. Like these guys are all act like this all the time. It's just it's like smoke and mirrors,
Right,
and
right.
it's just a whole bunch of like Yoda riddles and all this ambiguousness. And it's just like, come on, guys, like this whole
Alejandro's
thing's
like, you're afraid of the dark. Just like little stuff like that. Like just messing with them constantly, and then seeing how Kate, was dumb, didn't listen to them, went to the bank, got her face on camera. We can actually build a case with this. It's like they're not trying to build a case if you haven't figured that out by now. Like, what are you talking about? And then
no.
they're like,
This
all
is a
right,
wet work job. That's
yes,
all this
that's
is.
the word I was thinking of. Wet work. This is a wet work job. And then how they just flip it. They're like, all right, if you're gonna do that, we're gonna use you as bait because you want to be stupid. Just flip it on you. But I mean, looking at this movie, I'm watching this and I'm like, yo, this looks a certain way. What did oh, I'm having a blank. I'm having a blank. But I'm like, did
A
what's
blank
his
of what?
name? The famous cinematographer. Having a blank, dad brain. But I'm like, did he do this? The same guy who did Skyfall, Blade Runner 2049. I'm like, yes, he did it. Yeah. And because I'm just like, yo, Roger Deakins. I'm like, did Roger Deakins do this? I'm like, yo, Roger Deakins, his work is just iconic. He did 1917 too. You're just like, yo, his work is just so iconic. The way he lights his scenes, it's like so immersive, but at the same time, it's like a sense of realism. And so that realism coped
He
with
should
what's
he
going
can
on.
revolutionize the porn industry.
I'm sure he could.
Matt Damon, Ben Affleck wants to.
What?
This was talking about they wanted to like revolutionize and actually start having real good written and directed porns with like good stories and stuff, and they were going to do it.
Nah, I can't believe that's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, man. I can't believe that. I don't
Yes, he
know.
can.
They're
It's
both
Hollywood,
family
dude.
men. Nah, I don't.
Really, Ben Affleck for a long time was viewed as this horrendous individual because of how he cheated on Jennifer Gardner with the nanny.
I mean, I guess all those celebrities be
Yeah,
cheating
but
on each
now
other.
most of porn now is just like the pseudo like relationship stepbrother thing anyway. So it's not that far off if they're family men. Like hey, let's just add that.
To get
Anyway,
back
I
on topic,
digress.
it had to be addressed. Oh, speaking of that, I did see Air with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. Good
What'd you
movie.
think?
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. I like the choice of not casting on Michael Jordan because that's all people would have talked about. That just would have been a
You
distraction.
can't. First off, you can't cast Jordan. Okay, that's
Yeah,
messed
eventually
up.
it'll happen when they do a biopic.
Yeah, well, he's dead.
I don't know. They did one on TV. You never saw the Michael Jordan biopic?
I mean, I've seen The Last Dance.
No, I'm talking about It came out
Uh,
like when I was a kid. I watched it.
when you were a kid, well, Michael Jordan was not even retired yet.
Yeah, man. It was like a I think it was a TV movie. 1999. Michael Jordan, an American hero.
He was still playing basketball then.
They made it. Yeah, this is the movie. Yeah. Yeah,
The Lakers dynasty show with Magic Johnson and Jerry Buss. Who was it? John C. Riley plays Jerry Buss.
yeah.
Fantastic show. I forget what it's called. That's
Oh, I know
coming
what you're
back. I'm
talking about
looking
on
forward to
Max.
that.
Yeah, people told me I gotta check that out. But yeah, there's a
You would
Michael
really
Jordan.
like it.
Michael Jordan. It was a TV. It's categorized as a TV movie. It came out in 1999. But yeah, I like the choice of not casting him. But it was a good movie. But
I didn't.
yeah,
Yeah, because doesn't Matt Damon play Phil Knight?
no, Ben Affleck, and then
Ben Affleck plays Phil Knight.
yeah, and then Matt Damon plays Sonny Vaccaro.
Oh,
Vaccaro, I think his last name was the guy who
Ben Affleck
actually
doesn't look like Phil Knight though.
I know, but he put on the wig and he
Oh
has the
god.
wig on.
Yeah.
So
You
I
know,
guess
Magic
I could be.
Johnson turned down a bunch of stock and stuff for Nike when they were a startup, and
Yeah, and he talks about how he regrets that.
it's like $400 million right now. He just turned down.
But Magic is doing all right. I don't think you need to regret that
Magic
much.
Johnson's a billionaire, and I think he's okay. But
Yeah,
still,
you're a good
you know what
man.
I mean?
But yeah, what's Sicario, man? Back on topic, man. Sicario.
Wait. So, what do you think about doing a Sicario type of show versus movies? Do you think that, because I think now there's more shows going in that direction, like
Oh yeah.
Terminal List, and there
Basically
was
everything
another one
Taylor
on
Sheridan's
Amazon.
doing, you know. I mean, he's doing a lot of Western stuff right now, but I
What's wrong with
I like
that?
him as a writer, and he does a lot of good things. But I kind of
You don't
wish they
like
would do
westerns?
more shows like this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because like you said, like Terminalist, and it's hard to think of some. Usually, the ones that are on TV, like Sicario, are like cable network shows. You know what I'm saying? They're not like the I don't want to say high quality, but like the premium shows that we know nowadays. The shows that have like 8 to 12 episodes a season, and they're like movies, but like 8 hour
Yeah, it's not
movies.
like David Boreanaz's SWAT
Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So it's
or
like
not SWAT, SEALs or whatever, SEAL team.
yeah, SEAL team.
Yeah, yeah.
But I kind of wish there were more shows like this because it's I don't know how easy it would be to do, but it's interesting because it touches on a topic that is going on for sure. You know, I would be lying if I said like Yellowstone and all those Yellowstone shows,
I like that show.
they don't seem like something that would interest me right now. But if you did, and it's from the same creator, if Taylor Sheridan did the same thing with Cesario, but in a show format, I'd be down
I mean,
for it,
that's one
man.
of the most like it's like one of the biggest TV shows ever, dude.
Yeah, yeah, I
But
know, but
so one show though that I just think is just doing phenomenal is Foundation.
I'm on season 1, episode 3. Now that
I
I'm
told you
done
those.
Ted Lasso,
I
I'm
can't believe that it took me so long for me to like. You need to get on this show. It's based on
yeah,
books. Okay, keep in mind, like anything else, Isaac Asimov, who was pretty much the
the sci-fi
creator of
guy.
science fiction,
Yeah,
laws of robotics. He wrote all of the
I Robot,
Foundation books. Yes, exactly.
but
Fantastic show. The Lee Pace, man, I'm telling you, Lee Pace needs to get. If anyone hasn't really recognized how good of an actor Lee Pace is, Foundation's got to prove you otherwise.
oh yeah, 100%, man. Watching him, the episode, I don't know, I think it's episode 3 I'm on, but the last episode I saw him where he's talking to his older clone. He's like, "All this happened on your watch, but now I'm going to correct it." I'm just like, oh, every scene
Just
he's in,
wait,
he's chewing
wait
it.
till there's different iterations of Cletus,
Cleon,
right? Well,
yeah.
yeah, Cleon, right? Cletus. Jesus. Imagine King Cletus to 16.
you know. But yeah, I'm like the
Redneck sci-fi. I'm telling you, we need to do it.
redneck sci-fi, as opposed to
Oh,
Foundation, where everybody's British, but it's made by
why?
American creators.
Asimov was a Russian
Now
author.
I'll talk about
Oh,
David S. Goyer, and
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
think his name is Josh Friedman, the other creator. They're both
But
American
why? But why? But why? No, but I mean, the book's writer is Russian, but why is so many British people like Star Wars does the same thing? Every Imperial has to be British. Like, why can't we have like some variation with the bad guys?
because people haven't realized like Star Wars started the precedence of English people being like to show you how to like be a parallel to history where the British Empire was controlling all these colonies. They're like, oh, let's just make the bad empire British in every
But
sci-fi movie.
they're sissies now. Like they get so upset over everything.
I wouldn't go that far, but
Anyway, correction. Asimov is American, but his parents are Russian immigrants. It's besides the point. He's still Russian background. Okay, just making that correction for people who can hear me.
right,
Um,
right.
but
But
no,
I was telling a
Foundation
friend
though.
though. Mhm.
Foundation though. I hope they keep it up, but I know it's extremely expensive to make.
Yeah.
But it's like the second biggest Apple TV show ever, so I'm hoping that can keep it up for season 3 when they because this writer strike's messing everything up, right? So they're obviously going to have to. Any show is going to have to make tough choices if this is going to continue or not, especially if you're spending 15, 20 mil an
Well, the
episode,
actors
right?
are on strike too, so you ain't shooting nothing new. The
So no
directors
post
they
production
took a deal,
because
but
well,
mm,
that union's in place. The post production. So any movie's actually technically been filmed, post production could be in play for that, right?
yeah, because the video editors they're still good. Everybody else is still in contract that I know of. It's just the writers and the actors. So if
The two big
anything's
ones.
shot, you're good. You can just put it together in post production. But anything else, you're screwed. And I was telling a friend recently, I was like, there was a when Apple TV came out, it wasn't really popping as much, but now it's really starting to pick up steam. And I love the fact that Apple TV is just putting so much stake in sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I'm a sci-fi guy. Everybody else is trying to run on the heels of HBO and Game of Thrones, but Apple is the only one doing its own thing. They're doing sci-fi and they're doing like drama procedural type stuff. You
Oh,
know, with
dude,
Shrinking and
Hijacked with
Severance.
Idris Elba,
Yeah,
fantastic.
Hijack.
Oh, so good.
Which I thought was a movie when I first saw the trailer, but it turns
Yeah, I
out
was
it's a
like, oh,
show.
this is good.
But I'm like they're not really. I like seeing a company that's not trying to be on the heels of anybody else. Everybody else is just riding the wave, in my opinion. Whereas Apple's like, we're gonna pivot and we're gonna do sci-fi and like drama.
You know why, right? First off, Apple is the most profitable and most the largest company on the planet. All right, $3 trillion is their value. 3 trillion. Okay, so that's 3,000 billion, and there is 1,000 million in a billion. So you can put that money together. That's a crap ton of money. So they can kind of do whatever they want. And if they're like, I think this is where they want to go. They want to do entertainment. Like the phones only go so far, right? And I really think that once I think Apple TV has just good enough quality as for like a movie studio, they can do that. What
Well,
do you
they're
think?
making their own movies.
Yeah, I know, but like actual released movies, like they have their own movie chain and all that stuff.
Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. I think is it the FDIC? They would have to go through them to do that to make sure there's no like monopoly or something like that. Because when you're making your own movies and then you're owning your own theaters, that's a sketchy
I
thing.
guess when you have $3 trillion, you can kind of, you know.
Grease the wheels a little bit, you know.
What would you
Senator,
think about
oh,
that?
why do
So,
I buy this car?
all
You
right,
know,
so what's the largest movie studio besides like Disney and stuff? Like, what's the largest, just like it's only known for its movies studio, like type of thing?
eight? No, not HBO. Sony?
But Sony does other stuff. Like, we got to talk about like a media company that only really is just known for its movies.
I want to say Lionsgate, but I think that's wrong.
Okay, let's just use Lionsgate as the example, even if it's not true.
Mhm.
and they just go out of business, and you got these streamers left, like, you know, because that could happen, right? And Apple decides, you know what, let's just do our own thing. Would you be against that?
If Apple just did their own thing.
Yeah, like any of these streaming giants are just really known for like shows and stuff, and decided to like take over the movie business. Because as you can kind of see, there's a reckoning in Hollywood anyway, with how like people are like in this. Danny McBride did a interview with Barstool recently about like, you know, he's like he made a joke saying like he wasn't interested in acting and memorizing lines and telling people how to think. So that's why he moved out of Hollywood and moved back to South Carolina. You
Oh
know, he was
yeah,
like, I
yeah, I
just
heard that.
really wasn't interested in that anymore.
Yeah,
I
I
was
heard
like,
that.
he's making a joke, but I
He's
mean, it's
saying
true.
something. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get that because when I look at what the writers are fighting for, what the actors are fighting for, I get it. It makes sense. But on the different side, it doesn't make sense to me because I feel like you're the workers, right? Like if we're in a company and we're selling something and the workers make the product, the boss needs the workers more than the workers need the boss because the boss signs the checks, but the workers make the product that the consumers consume.
Mhm.
So my thing is, I feel like why are you fighting for a seat at the table when you have all the resources to make your own table? Because Hollywood
I
isn't
agree.
what it used to be. There's so
No,
many
it's not
avenues.
glamorous anymore.
There's so many outlets to where you can make your own channel, you can make your own website, you can make your own whatever. I mean, shoot, I made my own website. I got my own YouTube channel,
And a lot of
whatever.
filming is not even done in LA anymore. It's done in Georgia or Canada or
Albuquerque,
yeah, all over the
Atlanta,
place.
Baltimore. Yeah, it's all over the place. So I'm like, writers and actors could literally get together, make their own thing, and then be like, "Hey, we don't need you." Kind of like kind of like how Hollywood was made in the first place. So I don't really, I mean, I
We
get
talked
what you're
about
fighting
that.
for.
Remember, like in the last one, like, hey, look, the reason why Hollywood was created because Edison had a monopoly on filmmaking, and they wanted to do their own thing, so they moved out west and did their own thing.
Yeah, so
But
I'm
I got
like, what you want is noble, and I get it. You deserve what you want, what you're fighting
yeah,
for. But at the same time, I'm the kind of guy who's like, I'm not gonna beg you for what I deserve. I'm just gonna go over here and
just do it.
make make what I get. I'm gonna get what I deserve. I'm gonna take what I deserve by going over here and doing my own thing. I just feel like there's so many different outlets, and they know so many people that they can make their own thing. Their own Hollywood.
I got one last thing for you, and I think this is kind of conspiratorial. So Henry Cavill, we've talked about how he's lost these parts recently. Superman,
So many
no,
parts.
Highlander's no longer happening. The Witcher,
Highlanders. Nobody. I thought that was still on the table. That sucks because Chad Stileski was doing that.
yes,
Stahelski was doing that, and
yes.
I was looking forward to
There
that.
was a couple other parts, but anyway, he kind of like loses these parts, and you know, I'm thinking maybe he's preoccupied because there's something big that's looming, and he hinted at it on his Instagram a year and a half, 2 years ago, and that was Mass Effect.
That's exactly what I was thinking before you even said it. As soon as you said maybe there's something bigger, I was like Mass Effect.
Mass Effect. Maybe this is going to be it for him. Like Mass Effect. Like first off, because we already know how he is as a person. He's very private, but he's a known like nerd, right? And all this, which is refreshing and cutting off all the boxes. You know he's going to play Shepard. There is nothing that's going to convince me otherwise that you're not going to hire a guy like that not playing the protagonist. So what if it is Mass Effect and it's just so kept under
He
wraps?
could play Jace, the big buff guy.
No, yeah, but you know,
Like, nah, just playing. No, you don't hire Henry Cavill to play supporting character. You don't do that. He's either the main protagonist or the main villain. There's no other way.
with the mustache.
Yeah, that you can't remove until end of filming, until end of production.
No, until the trilogy's up, right? Because there's three Mass Effects, right?
But yeah, I was thinking that, and to put it full circle to what we were talking about before, you were saying Apple TV. I was talking about how Apple TV is going all in on sci-fi. You were talking about how Apple
What
is
if they
three
have? What if
trillion.
they got him on this?
That's what I'm saying. What other studio could do it? Apple, $3 trillion, like you said. I don't think they'll be like 500 million for Mass Effect. Tax write-off. It's nothing, negligible. I don't care. We'll release an iPhone SE, a new SE, and we'll make up the money. We'll recoup it.
No, exactly. That's what they do. Or they hint at like, hey, we got these great VR goggles that are $3,000 a piece. Come buy one, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, we'll release another Apple phone. It'll be the same one, but it'll be in like hot pink. And we'll just be like,
Dude,
oh, it's Barbie, huh? And make all the money back.
it's amazing how they do it. Like seriously, but no, that's a good point. I
I
think,
feel like Apple's the only one who would not turn up their nose on doing a Mass Effect.
but Apple needs a clearly like foundations there in terms of a franchise, but like a clearly identifiable franchise that represents them. Like Amazon's got it with Lord of the Rings, like a big franchise. Like Netflix has got a couple, Stranger Things, shows like that. Max, like but Apple needs that one that everyone's like, ooh,
It could be
let's
Mass
get
Effect.
everyone in this.
Could be Mass Effect, man. They need to work on it, man. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an Apple guy, you know that. I don't have anything Apple. I don't own anything Apple, but I do have Apple TV Plus because they're
I
the
love
only
Apple.
ones.
I'm part of the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm not, but they're the only ones really putting in money on sci-fi, and they're putting in digestible sci-fi. It's not like
Yeah,
when
not
I'm
just crappy sci-fi. I hate that.
yeah,
It's like a really bad tattoo, a really bad boob job, where it's so egregiously bad you have to look. You're like, what is this?
and
You know?
it's not like what's it called? Like what we were talking about with fantasy, where it's like so political and it's so convoluted. I'm like, who are you talking about? What happened? What happened 1,000 years ago? Who died? Who's the son of
And
who?
Mass Effect's got all those characters that they can check off, and it's already been written, and it works seamlessly. You don't have to go out of your way to like change things.
That's so true, bro. That's so true. But they will. They did it in Halo. They will. So,
What do you need to change? You got as many gay relationships as you want. You got bisexuals. I don't understand what else you need.
you got like every color on the human spectrum,
You
and then
got
they have
every
aliens that have
race,
different
right? You got
colors.
blue aliens, green. You got
You even have
spider
aliens who have
things.
racism in their alien culture.
I love it.
It's crazy.
I love it. It's great. It's got everything, so everyone can be happy and they don't feel like they're marginalized in any kind of way.
So Apple TV, while the strike is going on, start building this up. Start talking to people in back rooms. Like as soon as the strike's over, we're gonna make this. And you know why? You heard it from us over here at the Nomader Bitcast. So give us some credit. All right.
Yeah.
But my Nomads, this was another good one. We didn't talk too much about Sicario, but hey, sometimes that's what happens, man. We just go off on tangents and we have conversations. So, this is another good one, my Nomads. Peace out. Be creative.